By the late 1960s, Knott's Berry Farm was considered to be a world-class theme park, a great place to take the family for a day of fun. You could take a wild journey on the Calico Log Ride, or explore the deep, mysterious caverns on the Calico Mine Ride. Strolling through Ghost Town was like stepping out of a time machine and into the early days of the Old West. With authentic buildings and actual gunslingers roaming the streets, the experience of Ghost Town was as real as it got. In October of 1973, something very strange happened at Knott's, and Ghost Town took on a different appearance. An unusual fog began to emanate from the buildings, and freakish monsters emerged. What was happening? It was the very first Halloween haunt. Almost out of nowhere, this incredible event took shape and has become famous the world over. So what was the inspiration for the Halloween haunt, and how did it come to be? The year was 1972, when a unique idea was presented to the entertainment director of Knott's at the time, Bill Hollingshead.
So when I was at Knott's Berry Farm in 1972, it was 1972, I got a call from a guy named Gary Blair, who was the manager of Larry Vincent, who was Seymour.
Larry Vincent was best known for his campy character Seymour, a self-proclaimed master of the macabre. Seymour hosted a show on local Los Angeles television called Fright Nights.
They'd run an old cornball monster movie, and then he'd make asides.
The biggest thing about Seymour, what set him apart from every other horror host that there had been up till then, was that he was absolutely frank about what a load of crap the movies were that he was running. He called his viewers fringies, and he endlessly pointed out every flaw in those movies, insulted you for tuning in and wasting your life watching this crap. And he was hysterical. It was like Groucho Marx in a graveyard. I'll tell you, fringies, this movie is a real load. Next week's little grabber is Invasion of the Animal People. I should warn you, this movie is not as good as it sounds.
People were just really into Seymour, and he became a cult figure. So Gary Blair called me up in 1972, I think around first part of September. He says, Bill, I understand you have a theater with a CinemaScope screen and two 35 millimeter movie projectors. Why don't we put Seymour in there and run a big Halloween event? And I thought, hey, we could do that, and we could bring in the monsters.
Booking Seymour into the Knott's Theater presented some very unique opportunities for them.
I was called into a meeting, and Bill Hollingshead was there, and a George Condos was there, and a Martha Boyd was there, and we started talking about what we could do.
And we said, this could be an incredible special event, hard ticket. And we got into about the third week of September, and we said, there's just not enough time. We only have about 4, 5, 6 weeks to pull this thing together. So I called Gary back and I said, call me in the spring of next year, and let's just really make something out of this.
The Knott family, which controlled Knott's Berry Farm at that time, didn't care very much for the idea. At that time, there was only one person who, in the Knott family, who was in favor of the idea completely from beginning to end. And remarkably, it was Walter Knott. Walter Knott took a walk through the park, and he had a meeting, as he usually did, conversations with his key people. And this particular day, he had Champ Gabler walking with him. And they were discussing the fact that there was a vote that had been taken, apparently within the family, that was negative about this idea of the haunt. Walter said he wanted to know what the idea was. What was it we wanted to do? Champ Gabler was speaking for Bill Hollingshead and the crew, and he told them, we'd like to have a big Halloween party. And Walter wanted to know what the situation was. Well, the family had voted negatively against it. And at about this point, they had reached a landmark within Knott's, which is a bench that has two permanent figures on each end. Walt sat down in between the two figures and took a moment and looked around, looked at Ghost Town, and said, I want a party. I want to see it here. I'm voting for it. That's my vote. That's all I have to say on the matter. For Walt to vote unanimously over the rest of the people was rare. He usually deferred a lot of the decision-making to his family. This was different. This was something he wanted. This was something he approved, and it wasn't going to be discussed. I will always respect a man for that.
Now we're going for the premiere year, 1973. So I met with George Condos again and Martha, and had conversations with Sandy Parker, who was the theater manager of what was then called the John Wayne Theater. And she said, well, you know, I have makeup artists and I have all the theater people, because she was associated more with theater. And we could do costumes, and we could do set designs, and we could do phony, or the fake cobwebs and spray, and you know, old U.S. Army camouflage netting, and drape it over the overhangs of the shacks and make everything kind of creepy.
Well, we can use our stuntmen as street characters, as monsters. And we only had about 7 then, but you know, that was the idea.
So it was Martha Boyd who came up with the name, the Halloween Haunt. Then it became Knott's Scary Farm, which of course was a natural. So Knott's Scary Farm's Halloween Haunt.
The show was rehearsed, the park had been decorated, and the stage was set for the very first Halloween haunt. The anticipation was high, and no one knew what to expect, or if they would ever do this event again.
Today, as people look back on the first Halloween haunt, they don't think of it as anything really big. But back then, it really was, because nobody had ever done anything like that.
I just remember a lot of people come running through the gate as we opened. They were, you know, running and screaming.
We had to shut down the ticket box. We turned away people at the Halloween haunt. It was that popular.
We didn't know what we had created in terms of the volume of interest. So when we saw all these people at the front gate, it was like, oh, what do we do now?
We knew we had something actually on the very first one. We had tried other events, and it not worked, and this just seemed to work.
So we said, we have a hit on our hands here.
Seymour's show went off without a hitch and was very well received by the guests.
They loved him. I mean, he was just really, you know, he was applauded wildly.
He was very popular at the time because he had a TV show, and so he was very popular. The place was packed. They loved him.
Seymour had been on the air about 2 years, and he was huge. He was huge. He'd already left Channel 9 for Channel 5 for a bigger show. Fright Night with Seymour had become Seymour's Monster Rally. The kids stood out in line for a long time to get the good seats to this show, and we did not have an empty seat.
He was really loved. He was really loved here in Southern California.
The street characters for that first year were inspired by some of the famous movie monsters of the time.
We had Frankenstein, Wolfman, Count Dracula, and the Mummy alive and in person. They were live flesh and blood. Their flesh, your blood.
I remember that there was about 7 or 8, or maybe 9 of us on the streets, and we had the Planet of the Apes characters that Gene Witham did the makeup for.
Yeah, the first year I was in a Planets of the Apes costume. And Gene Witham had, and I think he said it was like original pieces from the movie.
The characters were the Planet of the Apes. Each one had a 3-piece appliance, and it took normally 3.5 hours to do each one. We had an hour and a half to make up 37 people in full makeup that would last 5 hours.
And they put these pieces on our face with spirit gum, and it was a long time. It was a lot of work to get into that, and then the costume and everything. And so we got all made up, and off we went out into the park.
But it was all traditional monsters that I remember. It was like a guy dressed up as the Wolfman. Another picture I've got is someone in a Planet of the Apes outfit, Dracula, Mummy, all of the very, very classic monsters at that point.
And that's what actually gave birth to the street monsters. I mean, it worked so well, and the things that worked well, we certainly kept in the show.
Bud Hurlbut was the creator of both the Mine Ride and Log Ride, and was still in charge of both of the rides at the time.
Bud Hurlbut, he's the grand old man of those, the Mine Ride and the Log Ride, and was very revered as a pioneer in those major thrill rides and themed rides. And he said, hey, I can put my guys in costumes, and we can put in the black light, and we can put in the scary light or the strobe lights. So everybody rose to the occasion.
The success of that first year went far beyond anyone's expectation. The plan to do it again the following year was without question, and Larry Vincent was again booked as the headliner for the second annual Halloween Haunt. Unfortunately, Larry was diagnosed with cancer shortly before October of 1974 and wasn't sure he was going to be able to do the show.
Larry Seymour had come down with cancer, and he was in the hospital. And he was very frail, and Gary Blair said, I don't know if he can even make it. But he had had so much fun.
He was gaunt, he was weak, and doing that show energized him like you wouldn't believe. You know, there was a huge roar, this giant ovation for him every night, and he just absorbed energy from it. You could just see it fill him with life. As the weekend progressed, he got more and more energetic and more up and more like the old Larry. It was fantastic to see.
It just was the thrill of his life, and he literally got up out of a sick bed. And then we had Chuck Jones, the magician. We integrated him into the show, and also Mona Lisa, who to me was really the first Elvira.
Mona Lisa, a predecessor to Elvira, was played by Lisa Clark. Lisa got her start in television and was hostess to a sci-fi movie show in the early 60s.
Mona Lisa was a horror host in San Diego. And when Seymour had first been a big success, when he left Channel 9 and went to Channel 5, Channel 9 brought her in to fill his slot and compete with her. And very nice lady, great to work with. Anything, I want to do this with you in the script. Fine, I'm just happy to be here.
People in the LA area didn't quite know who she was, but it really didn't matter because her character was what was important. Her look, the vamp type. Like Vampira, only it was Mona Lisa. So we integrated her with Larry, and Larry sat on a stool at the side and he narrated the movie, and then we'd take Mona Lisa and put her in one of Chuck Jones's cut the lady in half, and then we'd saw Mona Lisa in half and pull the parts. So it was like a vaudeville magic movie stage show.
The bit I wrote was that Seymour would, as soon as they cut her in half, Chuck's already off, and the Frankenstein monster and the mummy are separating her. And as soon as she's separated, I have Larry stride out and take over the stage. And he tells the mummy, take that one and ship her to Cleveland, and take that one and ship it to Zanzibar. And they exit through opposite sides of the stage with the box. And then you never see Mona Lisa again. She doesn't even come out for a bow at the end. She's shipped off.
Although Larry was very sick, he was the consummate professional and hid his illness while on stage.
He was very ill at the time. He had been in the hospital. I literally drove to St. Joseph's Medical Center and picked him up at the hospital and drove him to Knott's Berry Farm the night before the haunts began. He got out there that first time, and the audience, who did not know he was ill, they went nuts. There was no thought in his mind that that last performance at Knott's Berry Farm would in fact be, as it was in fact, his final performance ever in his career. Good evening, Fringies! I'd like to tell you all how glad I am to be back at Knott's Berry Farm for the second time at their Halloween haunt. I'd like to, but it's not my style. Well, Fringies, we've got quite a show for you here this evening. I've got one of my famous thrillers for you. Don't worry, this is a goodie. It's none other than the immortal Boris Karloff in The Bride of Frankenstein. For your further edification, I, Seymour, will personally narrate this film. Proj, roll the film. Well, Fringies, the time has come for me to make that dread sojourn into the world that lies out there, beyond the slimiest of walls. On behalf of Knott's Berry Farm and the John Wayne Theater, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. I'd like to, but it's not my style. Through the wall, his television theme music would come up that we used also at Knott's. He's through the slimy wall and out, and the show is over.
The following March, Larry lost his battle with cancer and passed away at the age of 50.
Larry died. He'd gotten out of his deathbed to come and do that for the 3 or 4 days, and then went back and, he died.
And I got up one morning and there was a note taped to my front door by my next door neighbor. Had left it before driving up to work and just said 3 words, Larry is dead. But the last time we talked, he did tell me what his thoughts on it. If you watch a bird, this was what he actually said, if you watch a bird fly off into the sun and you can't see the bird anymore, it doesn't mean the bird is gone, it's just gone where you can't see it. He says that I'm flying off into the sun.
After Larry's passing, the void left behind was going to be extremely difficult to fill. After all, it was Seymour that provided the main feature for the Halloween haunt. The question came up regarding how they would continue the event without him.
So, okay, we can't just do this with Mona Lisa. Who can we do this now? And I said, well, we've got the Universal Pictures monsters. We have, believe me, this is how it came out. I'm saying, we have Frankenstein, Count Dracula, the Mummy, and Wolfman Jack.
I'm your boogeyman, I'm your boogeyman. Take me out, I'm your boogeyman, I'm your boogeyman. Do what you want, boogeyman, I'm your boogeyman. Take me out, I'm your boogeyman, I'm your boogeyman. Do what you want.
Robert Weston Smith, a.k.a. Wolfman Jack, took the reins in 1975 as host to the Halloween haunt. Wolfman Jack was indisputably the world's most famous DJ and was just coming off the success of the film American Graffiti.
Unnatural, the Wolfman. So I called up Don Kelly, who is his personal manager. I said, Don, we want to replace Seymour with Wolfman and make him the star of the 75 Halloween haunt. And I hung up the phone and the tires screeched outside the building and he was down from LA and we sat there and we laid out this show in about an hour that we could put Frankenstein into the show and with a band, and we'd do the Monster Mash with Frankenstein.
Well, hi all you second-hand Frankensteins and you drugstore Draculas. Hallelujah, we gonna party here tonight. And if you want to party, I want to hear you say, oh yeah. I say if you want to move and groove, I want everybody to say right out. You really want to get down to me, you howl. Spring out the grave digger for now. And listen, everybody, get on the floor. Let's dance.
And we had 3 girl singers, and we put them in witch costumes, and then, but Wolfman was Wolfman.
Wolfman Jack, X-E-R-B.
We gonna have fun, make romance, take that last chance on a high school dance. Out of sight. Woo. Oh, I was out there in the audience. I saw a lot of good-looking people out there tonight. This is gonna be a great night. Ain't no ugly people in this audience. No way. Send all the ugly people down to Disneyland.
But he was a character. So he was there, I know, in 1975 and 1976.
Wolfman Jack hosted the Halloween haunt until the end of the 1970s. By that time, the haunt was well on its way to becoming the largest Halloween event in the world. Bill Hollings had worked at Knott's until 1976. During his time, he's credited for increasing the park's attendance significantly.
My forte was celebrity talent. Seymour's the celebrity. And what do? You take a celebrity, build a theme around it, and then you build theme shows around the theme. And I give credit to Sandy Parker, who was the theater manager, who said, we have Gene Witham. He can do the makeup. And Gary Salisbury. I should mention Gary because he was the street character supervisor, so he had all these gunfights and the hangings and all the character type horror things that were going on in the ghost town area.
It was a group of people who came together during those certain years that'll never happen again. Tremendous talent, tremendous creativity. They all came together at Knott's Berry Farm, and there was like an explosion there, where a lot of good things came out of that.
I wish I could have bottled it, because I would be the richest man in the world. The people that were involved at the very beginning had a dedication that I'm sure still lives today to the haunt. We're all joined at it because it's part of us, and it always will be.
I didn't realize how big it had grown. I didn't realize that people from all over the world followed it and knew about it. And I just heard recently how big it's really gotten. And yeah, I feel good about that. That's kind of a neat thing to think that I was there at the beginning, that I participated in that for 3 years and was part of it all and knew the people that started it. It's a great feeling. I treasure that.
It's the biggest event that any amusement park has ever put on in the world, and the biggest revenue-producing event, and it's a phenomenon.
I sure wish I had a percentage. But that's fine. It pleases me to know that I've left a legacy, and it also pleases me even more to know that somebody's come around and said, "Hey, weren't you the guy that put this thing together?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I was that guy."